Hi, everyone. Welcome to Random Crime Vids Daily. Today we're going to take a look at part 2 of our Kara Nichols documentary. In part 1, we covered Kara's life leading up to her disappearance. In this video, we plan to cover the investigation and trial that followed. After being turned away at the police station, Terrence reached out to his parents. The eldest son recounted what had happened and asked for help, knowing that in such cases, collective pressure was necessary. As soon as the family learned of their daughter's disappearance, they immediately flew to Colorado Springs. Kara's cell phone was still turned off, and it was also discovered that she had not shown up for the job she valued so much, confirming their worst fears. Convinced, the Nichols family went to the police. Law enforcement was compelled to respond to their report. Eventually, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office acknowledged that the circumstances of her disappearance raised questions. Detectives reached out to local residents asking for any information about the girl's whereabouts. At the same time, the parents allowed investigators access to her cell phone data. Experts confirmed that the last message Kara sent was to her brother. Based on cellular provider data, it was known that on October 9th, her mobile device was indeed headed north, but was then turned off. Friends and acquaintances also joined the search efforts, distributing flyers throughout Colorado Springs and Denver. After talking with her close contacts, investigators examined other means of communication used by the girl, particularly her laptop. Thus, early in the investigation, a secret the girl had closely guarded from her family was revealed. Some of her modeling work posted on websites served as a cover for the escort services she had been involved in since she was 17. This was how Paul and Julia learned the true source of Kara's livelihood. However, there was not enough time to recover from the shock. Consent was needed to disclose this information to get new leads. At the same time, this circumstance could significantly affect the investigation and decrease public interest. Unfortunately, there are many examples where the perception of the victim was notably distorted in such cases. The Nichols didn't want to air their dirty laundry but were forced to do so in the hope of an exception. However, no miracle occurred. After the new details were published, news agencies began canceling interviews with Kara's family one by one. Coverage of the disappearance waned. The search for the girl hit a dead end. The only organization that took up helping with the investigation was the National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation. They ensured that the community and authorities did not forget about the missing model. In November 2012, detectives announced their intention to speak with two women who were believed to have been in the car with Kara on the fateful night. Some even described their appearance. They possibly belonged to the same line of work as the missing girl. Undoubtedly, the witnesses were of interest to the investigation, but were not considered suspects. Most likely, these women were the last to see her alive. A composite sketch of one of them was made publicly available. However, hopes that someone would come forward proved vain. Later, even the testimony of their existence was doubted. The investigation stalled again. That month, Kara's photos appeared on an escort service website in Las Vegas. However, detectives found that the girl had not been involved in the posting. Someone had decided to capitalize on her popularity. Subsequently, the Nichols profile was removed. Concerned citizens periodically approached the police station. However, after verification, their reports turned out to be false. In the spring of 2013, a businessman from Colorado Springs claimed to have seen the sought-after woman from the end of October through December 2012. She was with a tall, unkempt man. The woman appeared frightened, as if she was being forcibly held and made to do something. One day, her companion pushed her, which did not escape the notice of a bystander. He threatened the man and asked him to leave the lady alone. The eyewitness's statement was verified. The police managed to find the man described, but detectives confirmed that the woman with him was his former girlfriend. In the autumn of the same year, a criminal law student decided to investigate Kara's case independently. He traveled to Denver and spoke with many homeless people and substance users. Some of them reported seeing the missing woman at a nonprofit organization dealing with the exchange of syringes and needles for those using banned substances. However, it later turned out that the lead was false, and so it was with every testimony. Many had already given up hope of finding the story's heroine alive. Too much time had passed for this type of case. In the summer of 2013, the girls' parents announced a reward for any information regarding their daughter's whereabouts, but it all seemed futile. Kidnapping for ransom was ruled out as no demands had been made over the months. A new development the following year brought a sensational breakthrough that spurred movement in the investigation. In May 2014, Deputy Sheriff Cliff Porter admitted to having cut corners in the investigation. Unexpectedly, he disclosed that he had not given enough attention to Kara Nichols' case and, most importantly, had overlooked substantial evidence that could have played a critical role in the early stages of the investigation. This confession shocked the Nichols family, as they felt the investigation into their daughter's disappearance had been treated carelessly due to her line of work. The inadequate handling of cell phone records called into question the entire office's conduct. The authorities' inaction did not go unnoticed. Numerous audits brought discipline to the department, and those responsible were removed from their positions. In May 2016, former Sheriff Terry McKitta and members of his staff were charged with corruption, fabricating witness testimony, kidnapping, and extortion. This convinced the victim's family that their relative's case had never been appropriately handled. Nevertheless, this event provided a new impetus for the investigation. Thanks to a change in detectives, in February 2022, the missing woman's body was discovered. She was found buried in a grave alongside a horse corpse on a farm near Colorado Springs. But let's go through the details in order. On February 1st, 2022, a woman named Joel Hollendorfer walked into the police station. Detectives had tried to speak with her several times before, but she had refused to cooperate. Since 2014, the witness had been unwilling to testify against her former husband, Joel. However, years later, she broke her silence and accused her ex of murdering Kara Nichols. An examination of the missing girl's calls and messages revealed that she had received 8 calls between 9:58 and 11:08 p.m. on October 9th, most of which were from a man named Joel Hollendorfer. Detectives had interrogated him several times, but beyond general information, they discovered little. He admitted to having hired the woman's services and had planned to meet her from the evening of October 9th to the morning of October 10th. However, the meeting never occurred. The escort did not make it to him. His statement raised suspicions, especially since the geolocation data from Kara's mobile device indicated that on the night of her disappearance, she was near the suspect's parents' house. On October 15, 2014, a search was conducted at the man's and his family's home. At the time of the search, detectives spoke with Joel and his mother, Betty. They noted their calm and friendly demeanor. It did not appear that they were hiding anything. They kindly showed the entire property, including several fresh burial sites for deceased animals. It should be noted that the Hollendorfer family had owned the farm since 1985 and had a large livestock yard. Dogs trained to find human remains searched the area. They reacted to some of the livestock graves a few times. However, further examination of their contents revealed nothing suspicious. It was possible that the dogs confused the scent of dead animals with that of a human. To definitively rule out Joel's involvement in the crime, samples from some suspicious areas were collected for analysis. However, the tests showed that the samples were unrelated to the case. Nonetheless, suspicions about the man were not lifted. It turned out that Hollendorfer had a history of harassment and violating restraining orders. He was a hardened criminal who had repeatedly violated the terms of his parole. Moreover, he had used banned substances which had contributed to the breakdown of his family. The investigation had approached his ex-wife at least twice. During conversations, it was established that Christina and Joel were raising 2 children. Initially, the woman was reluctant to share details of their life together and later refused to communicate altogether. Thus, along with other theories regarding Kara's disappearance, Joel remained the only suspect. Finally, after 8 years, his identity was exposed. Mrs. Hollendorfer claimed that in November 2014, her ex-husband confessed to her that he had accidentally ended the life of a hired escort and buried her body in an old horse grave. She learned about this after the death of her father-in-law. When the funeral was over, her former husband revealed that he felt guilty about his father's death. According to her, he confessed to his parents what he had done. Learning the terrible news, the elder Hollendorfer fell into a deep depression, became seriously ill, and soon died. All this time, his family had been covering for the criminal. This explained the incredible hospitality and cooperation that Betty and Joel displayed during the farm search. Everything was done to avoid raising further suspicion. On February 3, 2022, another search was conducted at the suspect's home and property. This time, the farm was thoroughly dug up. Subsequently, human remains were found in a pit 2 meters deep. 4 days later, the 47-year-old man was arrested. Later analysis confirmed that the found corpse belonged to the sought-after Kara Nichols. Essentially, only her bones remained. However, thanks to modern technology, the girl was successfully identified. During interrogation, the man didn't break down immediately. Eventually, however, he confessed that he had not intended to end the girl's life. He had indeed found her on an intimacy services website. On October 9th, he called her and arranged a meeting, after which he picked her up from her home. Intimacy occurred in his old car. Everything was fine until, in a moment of passion, the man began to strangle his companion. Once Joel realized that Kara had lost consciousness, he stopped. Initially, he tried to administer first aid, but it was too late. Kara was already deceased. Frightened, the criminal drove her to his family farm and buried her in the first grave he found. He moved the body several times and eventually buried it where his mother's favorite horse was interred. This explained why the search dogs were confused by the scents. Moreover, during the initial search, this particular area had not been inspected. Soon, Joel Hollendorfer was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Meanwhile, Betty denied any knowledge of the crime committed by her son, asserting that she had always cooperated with the investigation and genuinely believed in his innocence. The hearings took place in the summer of 2023. The prosecution insisted that the defendant had intentionally committed the crime, thus realizing his sinister fantasies. At the same time, forensic experts could not provide detailed information about the victim's death. However, based on the fact that Kara's hyoid bone was broken, asphyxiation was named as the cause of death. Experts claimed that one cannot accidentally strangle someone to death. There is always time to reconsider and stop. Another factor considered was the victim's state under the influence of banned substances. Hollendorfer's defense argued that Nichols' death was due to asphyxiation from which she could not recover. Under similar circumstances, the likelihood of recovery for a healthy person is significantly higher than for a substance-dependent individual. As depicted during the trial, an entrenched addict, which the victim was portrayed to be, would have no chance of survival. This was explained by the long-term effects of banned substances on the human body. Unfortunately, it was impossible to confirm or refute the lawyer's statements over time. The Nichols family was extremely upset by how their daughter was portrayed. Kara's father noted that this judgment negated any sympathy from the jurors and depicted her as an unworthy victim. Nonetheless, during the trial, Joel did not appear remorseful. Some observed that he even smiled at times. Ultimately, the defendant's actions were reclassified to second-degree murder. He was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 24 years in prison. The sentence did not satisfy the victim's family, who had hoped for a life sentence for the perpetrator. Moreover, due to insufficient evidence, no one else was punished. Julia and Paul Nichols called the process a complete miscarriage of justice. The bereaved parents hope that despite the numerous labels attached to their daughter, Kara's friends and acquaintances will remember her positively, not just as sensational news. She was a teenager who battled with mental health issues but was cruelly dehumanized, said the girl's mother. Do you think justice was fully served in the case of Kara Nichols' disappearance and death? Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to Random Crime Vids Daily on YouTube and follow us on TikTok. There are many shocking stories to be told.